Mayor Bernard Sanders of Burlington, Vermont, how does a socialist like yourself keep winning elections in a country we generally consider that has a two-party system?
Well, I think we win in Burlington. I should point out that in Burlington, I am the mayor, and I've won on 4 occasions, but we have 13 people on our city council, our board of aldermen, and 6 of them are progressive, so it's not just me. We have probably the only strong 3-party city in the United States of America. And I think the reason that we win and continue to win is that increasingly people are frustrated and angry about a 2-party system which is dominated by big money and which does not pay attention to the needs of working people or elderly people or poor people. And I think if you talk common sense to the people and you say the government is supposed to represent the needs of those people who today are not getting a fair shake, you know what? They'll vote for you. And the problem that we have nationally in this country is that the 2-party system dominated by big money is not delivering for ordinary people, which is why people are giving up on the political process, why they're not voting, and why there is a great deal of anger and frustration at the political system as it now exists.
Welcome everyone to our 11th lecture. Today we are talking about 3 groups with a lot of power in our elections and therefore a lot of power within the future of our nation. Political parties, interest groups, and the media. Now of course these groups do not just only influence campaigns, but they also influence our government every day. But they have specific roles during our elections that you should know. What it really comes down to is 2 things: money and publicity. So let's get started with political parties. A student asked, how did political parties start? With creating the Constitution. One side opposed it, the other side supported it. The first parties were Federalists and Democratic Republicans. The Democratic Republicans ditched the anti-Federalist name because they wanted to be pro-something, and that something was a small central government. But these parties died and split and were reborn again throughout the past 200 years until we have Democrats and Republicans today. Now, as we know at this point, in order to have a successful campaign, you will need recognition, money, and organization, to name a few things. A political party offers all of this if you identify as a Democrat or a Republican when you run. These are the 2 clubs with the most resources, and if you share the same values as these clubs, you get to use their resources of campaign strategists, funding, and publicity. For a presidential race, once you win the Democrat or Republican nomination in the primaries, they have national conventions solidifying you as the nominee, with each prominent member of your party announcing their support for you, which gives you even more attention. And look no further than the amount of balloons and fireworks to demonstrate how much money these parties have to waste in your honor. Political parties can hire you as staff, throw fundraisers on your behalf, and offer money for ads and land interviews.
Yo voy a votar por Donald Trump. La buena vida por Trump. La economía por Trump. Hazlo por tu familia. Latinos por Donald Trump.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
But, and this is a big but, political parties can be very exclusive clubs. You have to prove yourself worthy of their resources in a primary, and sometimes there's already a loyal, well-connected member you're up against. This was the case for Democrat Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez running up against Joe Crowley for a Democrat seat. While she was running as a Democrat in a primary, the Democrats still favored the person historically with them. This was also the case for Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. In 2010, during her primary, it was so close that there was a recount and the Republican Party did not support her. After she conceded during the primary, Murkowski started a write-in campaign for the general election, meaning she needed people to actually write in her name on the ballot.
I get the message, I hear it loud and clear, and I announce today that I will be a write-in candidate in November for the United States Senate seat that I now hold. We're in this together.
And she incredibly won as a write-in candidate. While Ocasio-Cortez and Murkowski have very different political views, what they have in common is holding their own independent values more sacred than blind loyalty to a party. Each has no problem going against their party's grain. To this day, Murkowski is seen as a swing vote for Republicans in the Senate, and Ocasio-Cortez is a key figure in influencing more progressive policies for Democrats. So how were they successful against the party? Not only were they anti-establishment, but they were appealing directly to their constituents, meaning the people they represent.
You know, let's be honest, a lot of those who said that you couldn't do it also said that you shouldn't do it, and they were Republicans. What said to you, Lisa Murkowski, I'm going to be in this race?
It was from my state. It was from my state from the very beginning.
Well, I'm going to grab her. She's right here. I can't let you go. She's looking at herself on television right now. How are you feeling? Can you put it into words?
Nope. I cannot put this into words.
All right.
They had a smaller base to appeal to. For Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, it was New York's 14th district. For Lisa Murkowski, it was Alaska. Going up against one of our two main parties is very rare and incredibly difficult. And it's made even more rare and difficult if you run for president without party support, where you need more money, influence, and publicity. So let's talk about Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. While he serves as an independent senator, he ran as a Democrat in the 2016 and 2020 primaries. He shares Democratic views, but he also has criticized the Democratic Party for being heavily influenced by corporate interests and big money. So, why did he run as a Democrat?
What went into your decision to run for president as a Democrat? Wouldn't it be more revolutionary to work outside the traditional political party structure and run as a...
See, the problem is Chuck would not have me on his program if I did that.
Well, that is not true.
Oh, sure.
We love independents running. The more the merrier.
When we gave some thought to running for president, and the reason I gave thought, honestly, is not because I disrespect Secretary Clinton. I've known her for 25 years, and I respect her. But I just happen to believe that in this moment of history, given the crises that we face, it is too late for establishment politics and establishing economics. So we did have to make that decision. Do you run as an independent? Do you run within the Democratic Party? That A, in terms of media coverage, you had to run within the Democratic Party. Number two, that to run as an independent, you could be a billionaire. If you're a billionaire, you can do that. I'm not a billionaire. So the structure of American politics today is such that I thought the right effort was to run within the Democratic Party.
I believe that clip summarizes all the power the two main parties have. It's strategic and corrupt. But in order to change the system, you sometimes have to fight within it. And knowing that in 2016, both Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders ran as outsiders within the Republican and Democratic establishment, Donald Trump had the money to campaign however he liked for however long he wanted. Both of their original appeal lies in change to the status quo. The difference is the Republican Party followed Trump, and the Democratic Party has consistently relied on compromises without Sanders, but adopting a few of his platforms.
Madam Chair, I move that the convention suspend the procedural rules. I move that all votes cast by delegates be reflected in the official record. And I move that Hillary Clinton be selected as the nominee of the Democratic Party for President of the United States.
So where does this leave third parties? For example, the Libertarians with Joe Jorgensen and the Green Party with Howie Hawkins, currently polling at 4% and 1% respectively. Would they get more supporters with more media attention? Chances are, yes. The Green Party's whole campaign is centered around environmental justice and sustainability. supporting the Green New Deal as far back as 2010. The Green Party is considered the more progressive and liberal party compared to the Democratic Party in the United States. The Libertarian Party is ideologically more about liberty and small government than the Republican Party, making the argument that government should stay out of all matters, including abortion, firearms, and businesses. There are people who probably agree with these platforms more than they do with our two main parties, but in order to debate, you have to be polling at a certain percentage, and in order to poll at a certain percentage, you need a certain amount of publicity. The only way to get that publicity if no one knows you is to be a media magnet, to be eccentric and/or a billionaire, like 1992's Ross Perot.
I believe that there is so much waste around here. And again, every time you get into, see, I'm the only guy that talks numbers. I love this. Nobody else will even talk about it. As I've said, it's like a crazy ant in the basement. Everybody knows she's there, but nobody talks about her. I'm talking about it.
He campaigned as an outsider. He had the best third party and independent showing in recent history, garnering 19% of the popular vote, but no electoral votes. And people argue, because of the electoral system, for those who voted for Perot, could they have changed the outcome in their states if those individuals voted for Bush or Clinton at the time? Third party and individual candidates risk being painted as an enemy if they're too popular, spoiling the outcome of the two more popular parties. The other primary way to keep your campaign funded is through interest groups. An interest group is an organization of people sharing common interests or goals to influence public policy. Now, if that sounds exactly like a political party, you're not wrong. But interest groups have more specific goals. Rather than covering every view of a political party, they cover singular issues, like the NRA or the NAACP. Those are interest groups. The United States has more interest groups than most nations because of how our government is set up. And that comes down to two reasons. Number one, rather than donating to a party with a blanket of views, people donate to interest groups for specific causes. Number two, we have a government with many access points. A president, a court, a Congress, two chambers within that Congress, committees, individual members who all seek re-election. And this is just on a federal level. You can do this within a state too, with governors and state senators and assemblymen. Political authority in the United States is shared by a wide range of individuals, each looking for a little help from friends in order to get re-elected. Now, while there are plenty of interest groups who do great work on the behalf of people who feel unrepresented by government, there is an upper class bias within interest groups. This is where the Marxist view reigns supreme. Because well-off people are more likely to join and be active in interest groups, and interest groups representing businesses are more numerous and better financed than organizations representing minorities, consumers, and the disadvantaged. We'll discuss their impact within government in more detail later, but what you should really know is in terms of campaigning. Interest groups can make PACs, political action committees. A PAC is just a fancy way of saying another group that can raise money and spend money to get a candidate elected. And they can gather money and advertise in support of you or in opposition towards you.
After 47 years in Washington, Joe Biden on China.
They're not bad folks, but guess what? They're not a competition for us.
Joe Biden just doesn't make sense.
One of the most popular PACs right now is the Lincoln Project, a Republicans Against Trump group that uses its money to constantly run commercials against Trump.
Bullies are cowards who tear others down.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
Knock the crap out of him, would you? Seriously. Okay? Just knock the hell. I promise you, I will pay for the legal fees. I promise.
It's time for decency. It's time for Joe Biden.
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Now, PACs come with a few restrictions. They can only receive $5,000 from an individual per year and only give $5,000 to a candidate per election. They also cannot communicate to a candidate's campaign team. But this all changed with super PACs. the stronger, faster, more handsome brother of the pack. And super PACs were born from a Supreme Court case known as Citizens United versus the Federal Elections Commission, or as it's just better known today, as Citizens United. Citizens United is a conservative, nonprofit organization created to restore government to citizens. Its president, David Bossie, was a deputy campaign manager to Trump's 2016 campaign. But before that, Citizens United was in the movie business, making such movies as ACLU, At War with America, America at Risk, Battle for America, and Generation Zero, directed by Steve Bannon. In 2008, Citizens United aimed to release Hillary, the movie, a movie all about Hillary Clinton's corruption. Citizens United wanted to show a trailer and release this movie right during the 2008 primaries. Here's a bit of that trailer.
She makes herself sound like she has diplomatic experience, like she has managerial experience, as if she has policy development experience. She doesn't have any of those things.
She does not answer questions straight out. She's deceitful. She'll make up any story, lie about anything, as long as it serves her purpose of the moment. And the American people are going to catch on to it.
Ruthless, vindictive,
venal, sneaky,
ideological, intolerant.
Liar is a good one.
Scares the hell out of me.
I am sick and tired of people who say that if you debate and you disagree with this administration, somehow you're not patriotic, and we should stand up and say, we are Americans and we have a right to debate and disagree with any administration.
Then came the Federal Election Commission, the FEC, which is responsible for overseeing election conduct. The FEC said, you cannot show this movie on pay-per-view or advertise it because it's basically a political ad. And number one, corporations cannot influence elections through broadcasts. And number two, Citizens United, as a nonprofit production company, does not disclose its donors. Where does its money come from? Citizens United argued this violates the First Amendment for an organization to express its beliefs. This case ended up going to the Supreme Court, and in a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Citizens United, stating, the First Amendment does not distinguish between corporations and media. Why can media organizations depict candidates however they want, but other businesses can't? And money, your donations, is a form of free speech. And limiting corporations' money equals limiting speech of a group of individuals. For what is a corporation but just a group of individuals? The dissenting opinion was brought forth by John Paul Stevens. He wrote the dissent saying, corporations are not citizens and local and national elections will only further be influenced by corporate interests. The impact of Citizens United paved the way for two very important things. Number one being super PACs, PACs that raise unlimited money, but must disclose their donors and cannot contribute to a candidate or communicate with a candidate. A super PAC basically could accumulate all this money and run their own campaign for or against a candidate or a proposition. The loophole around disclosing donors is super PACs can take money from nonprofit organizations, like Citizens United. You just have to list that Citizens United donated to your super PAC. But, and this part is key here, nonprofit organizations do not have to disclose their donors. This is what we call dark money, money donated from undisclosed people or businesses, or even foreign individuals and businesses. So unknown people donate to nonprofits, those nonprofits donate to super PACs. This is the primary way of how campaigns are influenced by money today. This is it. And since 2010, we've seen money amplified from millions to billions in elections. Not just presidential elections, but midterms and small-town elections too.
In 2016 and 2018, super PACs raised almost $2 billion in each election cycle. More than 3/4 of Americans say that there should be limits on the amount of money individuals and groups can spend on campaigns. Some lawmakers in Congress have been working on bills aimed at evening the playing field. They've proposed measures that would help fund individuals running for office so those candidates wouldn't have to rely on big donors. Most of the bills face long odds. Even if they do pass, big money will probably continue to play a big role in U.S. elections.
The last piece I want to review are media organizations. Now, I'm strictly talking about news media right now. This is the publicity component, and when you get publicity, that's free advertising for a candidate. There are 3 technical roles of how media influences campaigns for the public. First, as gatekeeper. They control access to information. The media decides what stories deserve more attention than others. This could be through interviews or simply focusing on one candidate versus another, like how ABC strictly aired Joe Biden's town hall event and NBC aired Donald Trump's. The second role that media serves is as scorekeeper. This means that they report an update of polls or ratings on candidates and policies. They give a rundown of the favorability of candidates. For example, polling. Polls help shape a candidate's campaign too. Where should they be showing more advertisements? How can a candidate change their personal stance to better fit the people's tastes? The third important role that the media serves is as watchdog. The media informs the public with investigations into candidates and policies. This is where the media digs up dirt and conducts their own investigations into what a candidate might not be willing to share. Like Donald Trump's tax records. Under this category is strategically released dirt that candidates might have on each other and wait till the very last month of campaigning to release. We call this an October surprise. This is when candidates or media release a shocking news story and possibly shape the final outcome of an election. While we have nonprofit media organizations like PBS and NPR, they get their funding from donors and the government. The majority of our news comes from for-profit corporations that get their funding from ads and viewership. So those 3 roles, gatekeeper, scorekeeper, and watchdog, are not always in the best interests of the public, but in the interests of who can generate the most profit to see. What the public expects out of a candidate all changed with the rise of television, and specifically, televised debates. And the sweat seen around the world goes back to the 1960 debate between John Fitzgerald Kennedy and my man, Richard Milhouse Nixon. Is it too soon to hype up Nixon? Just saying, the guy founded the EPA, not Delaware. In the first televised debate, people got to see the cool, calm collectiveness of JFK and the sweaty, twitchy chipmunkiness of Nixon. Those who listened to the debate thought Nixon did a decent job. Those who watched it, hands down, the debate was won by the handsome Irish Catholic schoolboy JFK. Television media then gave birth to a new way to assess candidates. How well do they look on screen? How charming, how cool, how well can they play the saxophone, take a joke, do a cameo on Saturday Night Live? And now we expect our government officials to dance on Ellen too. We want them to be relatable, but also carry the nuclear codes. Now, this isn't to say that the media deems whoever is in office must be a crowd pleaser, but the media is attracted by candidates who invoke some strong reaction out of the people. And Donald Trump has perfected that outlet.
One thing with me, the nice part, I went through it. Now they say I'm immune. I feel so powerful. I'll walk into that audience. I'll walk in there. I'll kiss everyone in that audience.
Despite the media and Donald Trump's hostile, somewhat sexually tense, will they, won't they energy, they each have benefited off of their attacks on one another.
You denounced white supremacy.
No,
my question to you is,
you've done this to me and everybody.
Why does it seem like
I denounced white supremacy, okay?
You did
I've
2 days
denounced
later.
white supremacy for years, but you always do it. You always start off with a question. You didn't ask Joe Biden whether or not he denounces Antifa.
Despite having the most hostile campaign in recent history, the media showed Trump's campaign twice as much as any other candidate in the last presidential election. From State of the Union addresses down to Trump's morning toilet tweets, the media gets viewership, therefore more profit, and Donald Trump gets free publicity and a call to action for his base.
If I lost every vote, we would have won the state of Pennsylvania.
And the fake news refused to call it, right?
As I wrap up this lecture, what dawns on me too as I say this is the unfathomable power money has in the creation of our democracy. From parties to interest groups to the media, what's held as important is what's in your wallet. Campaign finance is at the heart of problems about our elections, and reform, in theory, has received bipartisan support. But any change truly requires a change in federal law or a Supreme Court ruling. While on one hand we have seen more candidates reject super PAC money, on the other hand, our president is a billionaire. So I'll end this lecture on this note. While people without money have far more work to do in order to influence our elections, it does work. It's why March for Our Lives protests, Black Lives Matter protests, and environmental protests and boycotts have influenced corporations to change their ways. In order to change government, we decide with our vote and our money and our attention on what to do and how to do it. It's a convoluted extra step for now, and it asks people to fight within and outside our election system in order to make change. But this is where the importance of our politics stand. In order for people to make change in campaigns, elections, and therefore our government, we must continue to talk about the issues that concern us. We must continue to use our money morally and not for convenience sake, and we must vote. While I begin this lecture talking about 3 factors that influence elections, parties, interest groups, and media, what also has power is you. These groups would be nothing without our attention, our money, and vote. Thank you for watching. Godspeed.